This is the Patriot Day Remembrance Ceremony from Diagonal Post 180. Standing by for the start of the ceremony.
Great, you? Good.
We'll get started here in about 2 minutes. We're waiting on a particular guest, and then we will kick it off. Just as a side note, we began at 8:46 a.m. this morning with the bells striking outside of the town of Vienna at the Presbyterian Church. That is to signify the first terrorist attack strike on the North Tower of the World Trade Center. And our attacks, for those that recall that horrific day, they began at 8:46 a.m. and they ended at 10:28. So we will be ringing bells accordingly for those that are after this meeting and you hear a church bell going off, know that that is the reason why. Again, we'll get started here in just about 2 more minutes and then we'll kick it off. Thank you. Good morning. There's been a small change in the program due to the relocation of this Remembrance ceremony. First off, can everybody hear me? Yeah. Nodding back. That's good. The color guard will not bring the colors forward as they are posted in front of us. At this time, I would like to ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and the National Anthem. Also, kindly ask anyone wearing a hat not part of the uniform, please remove it for the Pledge of Allegiance and National Anthem. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. National Anthem. Salute. remain standing for our opening invocation.
Please uncover. O God, our hope and refuge, in our distress we come quickly to you. Shock and horror of that tragic day have subsided, replaced now with an emptiness, a longing for an innocence lost. We come remembering those who lost their lives in New York, Washington, D.C., and Pennsylvania. We are mindful of the sacrifice of public servants who demonstrated the greatest love of all by laying down their lives for friends. We commit their souls to your eternal care and celebrate their gifts to a fallen humanity. We come remembering and we come in hope, not in ourselves, but in you. As foundations once thought secure have been shaken, we are reminded of the illusion of security. In commemorating this tragedy, we give you thanks for your presence in the time of need, and we seek to worship you in spirit and in truth, our guide and our guardian. Amen.
Recover. Thank you. Thank you, Chaplain. First, let me start by introducing our guests, and I want to say I appreciate everybody coming here. And to start with, I would like to introduce our wonderful and honorable Mayor Lori DeRocco. Council, and we'll save the clap till the end. Councilmember Pasha Mahadi, Howard Springsteen, Councilmember Linda Colbert, and Councilmember Carrie Sinecki. Also with us from the town of Vienna is the town manager, Mercury Payton, and we're fortunate enough today to have Police Chief Colonel Morris with us. Let's give them a round of applause. For the record, did I miss any dignitaries? Thank you. Everybody, please be seated. At this time, I would like to start this meeting with calling the mayor, Honorable Lori DeRocco, forward to read a proclamation for a day to remember. Lori.
Thank you, Jason. This is a proclamation from the town of Vienna. It says, whereas the unprovoked attacks of September 11, 2001 upon America by foreign terrorists have thrust the United States and other countries into a war it never envisioned, militarily or diplomatically. And whereas the challenges facing all the civilized people of the world as they relate to the war on terrorism will not end until those responsible are brought to justice. And whereas America is fully committed to ensuring our freedoms remain unfettered and sovereign for all generations, now and forever. And whereas one way to accomplish this is to never forget that those innocent victims did not die in vain, and whereas America can fight back by reminding the world that the deaths of these people will always be remembered and they will be forever loved. And whereas a noble and appropriate way to accomplish this is through the annual celebration of their living, and whereas this commemoration should be held each September 11th throughout the land to include the promotion of global peace and goodwill, the demonstration of America's resolve and perseverance to win the war on terrorism, the advancement of responsible citizenship, the encouragement of patriotism and love of country, and the poignant remembrance of those innocent victims that died on September 11th as heroes, one and all. Now, therefore, I, Lori DeRocco, Mayor of the town of Vienna, Virginia, and the Vienna Town Council, are issuing this proclamation to memorialize those whose lives were suddenly, without cause, and pointlessly taken from them on September 11, 2001. And may they forever rest in peace and abide in our memories.
Thank you, Lori. We've also been joined today by our Honorable Congressman Jerry Connolly. Jerry Connolly, would you like to give remarks?
You know, it was one of the most beautiful September days I ever remember. It was warm, blue skies, perfect day. And I can remember all of us initially thought, what was wrong with this airplane pilot that he crashed into a tower that was pretty visible on such a clear day? It took a while for us to accept it was deliberate. Of course, by the time the second airplane hit the second tower, our confusion was cleared up. And a beautiful, perfect day, made by God, turned into a day of horror made by man. I was at Fire Station 30 in Merrifield. My office was co-located with firefighters there. And our firefighters at that station were back up for Arlington Fire Department, which of course was racing to the Pentagon, where another terrible horror was unfolding. And it really struck me that on this day of horror, I mean, one felt physically sick watching the events unfold. The terror, people jumping out of windows, people holding hands as they jumped out of windows with human touch. But also so much heroism. People who tried to save others. People, well, firefighters and police who were going in the opposite direction of everybody else, knowing the risk they took. And in that horror, that human heroism has stuck with all of us. That there is something in the human spirit that can rise above degradation, terror, fear. And we saw America in an odd way ennobled that day. And that's why it's so fitting we always remember 9/11. It was a signal day in our history. It was a day that brought us all together as Americans. I wish that spirit had stayed with us in our politics. But it's not impossible. I hope that it doesn't require a civil act. But it is important to pause and remember there is something that does bring us all together. We are in common Americans. A lot of people from a lot of different countries who are Americans died that day in those two towers. Many of them were Muslims. They were Americans working, going to work. They were victims just like anybody else. And I think in the response, the collective response as a country, it was studied, it was careful. It wasn't an overreaction. And I think that was also a proud moment to be an American. So I had to be here this morning. I'm sorry I was late. Someone should do something about traffic right here. Because this is such an important day in our history, and I hope it always will be. And I thank the town of Vienna for honoring it and remembering it and allowing me to participate. God bless America.
Thank you, Congressman. I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker. Colonel Glenn Snodgrass graduated in 1967 as a distinguished military graduate from the ROTC program at Gettysburg College, who served in Vietnam with the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, military like acronyms, ACR, as a platoon leader and troop executive officer. He has served in various command and staff positions throughout his 30-year career, to include 2 brigade-level commands. Upon retirement from the United States Army, Colonel Snodgrass worked 15 years in the defense industry, and in 2012 was elected president of the Black Horse Association, a 501c3 nonprofit charitable organization representing 13,000 troopers, veterans, and friends of the 11th Armored Cavalry Regiment, the Black Horse, and served in that volunteer capacity until June of 2016. In 2015, Colonel Snodgrass was awarded the highest honor of the U.S. Cavalry and Armor Association, which is induction into the Order of St. George, Gold Medallion. Colonel Snodgrass lives in Fairfax Station with him and his wife, Joan, of 49 years. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker, Colonel Glenn Snodgrass.
Commander, thank you very much. I hope I'm half as eloquent as Congressman Connolly is. Mayor Rocco, Congressman, Town Manager Payton, Council Members Majdi, Colbert, Sinicki, and Sprimsteen. And once again, I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. How many in the audience have served in our armed forces at one time or another? Thank you for your service. How many of you were in service on 9/11? Were any of you in the Pentagon that day? Those are the people who really know what today really is. But no matter our situation or location, my guess is that all of us remember exactly where you were, we were, what we were doing on that day 17 years ago. My experience is very much like Congressman Connolly's. I was in my office at SAIC near here, Tyson's Corner, when news came in that an airplane had struck one of the World Trade Center towers. Now, something like that had happened before, but was deemed an accident, and those of us in the office said, probably another time. We turned on radios in the office TV about the same time the second plane hit. It was something far different than anything that had ever happened before. We started changing channels to get the latest updates from other sources. Then came the news about the crash of the third plane into the Pentagon, amidst reports of yet a fourth plane, perhaps en route to the DC area. It was chaotic, trying to make sense of it all. 17 years ago today, our nation was attacked without warning or provocation. It was a Tuesday morning, just like today. Many of us were just arriving at work. Others were in our homes and at our schools. On the West Coast, people were just waking up from a night's sleep. But through the medium of television, together we watched the horrific events we now know as 9/11 unfold before our very eyes. In the weeks to follow, we would continue to watch and mourn and grieve together as a nation. During those attacks, nearly 3,000 people were killed on the 4 planes at the World Trade Center and the surrounding area and at the Pentagon. More than 6,000 others were injured. The attacks were the deadliest terrorist attack in world history and the most devastating foreign attack on U.S. soil since the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Most of those who perished were civilians except for 343 firefighters, 72 law enforcement officers, 55 military personnel. Overall, over 2,600 U.S. citizens, including over 2,100 civilians, perished. More than 90 countries lost citizens, including the United Kingdom with 97, Dominican Republic with 47, India with 41. We all remember the details and events of 9/11. For many of us, just the mention of the day's name, or perhaps an image of one of the planes, can still catch us off guard and stir up the same disturbing mixture of anger, shock, fear, and outrage we all experienced on that first day. There are those times we probably wish we did not remember, and yet we know that we cannot ignore this or somehow put it away on the shelf. We lost too much on 9/11 simply to go and move on. And so we have gathered here today to remember. We remember, first of all, the lives of those innocent people who died. The terrorists who planned and carried out the attacks had no right to take those lives. We remember the passengers and flight crews on the planes. We remember the workers and children in the towers. We remember the people in the Pentagon. We remember wives separated from husbands, husbands separated from wives, children separated from parents, and loved ones separated from family and friends. We also remember those people who willingly sacrificed their own lives in order to save the lives of others. We remember the firefighters, the policemen, and other first responders. We remember the medical workers and other emergency personnel. We remember those who bravely entered that cloud of dust and debris and did not return to their homes and loved ones that night. We are inspired by their courage, stunned by their sacrifice, and challenged by their example. They have rightly earned the title of heroes. And then today we also remember those who continue to serve our country, both here and in foreign lands, to protect us from further attacks. We remember those who serve in the various armed forces of our nation. We remember the veterans. We remember those who serve in the government. We remember those who serve the public as policemen, firefighters, paramedics, and various other capacities. We're grateful to all those who risked their lives in order to protect our country and preserve our freedom. Innocent lives lost, willing lives sacrificed, determined lives continuing to fight on for freedom. Those are the reasons we have gathered here today. Those are the reasons we choose to remember. 9/11, never forget. To paraphrase our 44th president on this day a few years ago, 17 years may seem like a long time, but for the families who lost a piece of their heart that day, I imagine it can seem like yesterday. Perhaps it's the memory of a last kiss given to a spouse, or a last goodbye to a mother or father, a sister, or a brother. We wonder how those lives might have unfolded, how their dreams might have taken shape. No words we offer or deeds we do can ever truly erase the pain of their absence. The survivors and families of 9/11 have inspired our entire country. Even as they have mourned, they have summoned the strength to carry on. In the names of those they have lost, they have started scholarships and volunteered in their communities and done their best to be a good neighbor, a good friend, and a good citizen. And in their grief and grace, they have reminded all of us that together, there's nothing we Americans cannot overcome. Since that fateful day, our men and women in uniform, Homeland Security, and law enforcement professionals have stepped forward to serve and have risked and given their lives to help keep us safe. Thanks to their extraordinary service, we've dealt devastating blows to Al-Qaeda and then ISIS. We've strengthened our Homeland Security. We've prevented attacks and we've saved lives. Our nation's leadership has resolved to continue to doing everything in our power to protect this country that we love. And today, we once again pay tribute to these patriots, both military and civilian, who serve in our name, including those far away from home, in the Middle East and elsewhere. Across our country today, Americans are coming together in service and remembrance. People will touch the names on memorial benches at the Pentagon. They will walk the hallowed grounds of that field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. They will look up at that new tower on the New York City skyline. But in the end, the most enduring memorial to those we lost is to stay true to ourselves, that we stay true to what's best in us, that we do not let others divide us. It's all of us, every American who gets up each day and lives our lives and carries on. Because as Americans, we do not give in to fear. We will preserve our freedoms and our way of life. The proclamation that Mary Rocco read from this morning is wonderfully written. I ask that you take the time to read each of the statements very carefully and reflect. This is why we have gathered today. Thank you again for this wonderful opportunity.
Thank you, Colonel. On September 11th, 2001, in an unforgivable and horrific attack, terrorists robbed America of more than 3,000 lives. Quite simply, September 11th, 2001 wounded our nation in a way we have not known since the shock of Pearl Harbor. In bringing down the World Trade Center, damaging the Pentagon, and downing an airliner in a Pennsylvania field, the Today ranks as the most devastating in our nation's history. We vowed we would not forget, but happened. Domestic issues and war in Afghanistan have our attention, and for good reason. But I fear September 11th is fading in our memories, now relegated to a single paragraph in a newspaper stories and occasional references on television. Hundreds of families, though still suffering, gave him homes. A mother, a father, a brother, a child is no longer among them. Along with these loved ones, more than 300 emergency service workers perished in the attacks. Their survivors live with pain of September 11th daily. Those of us who were not directly affected by the attacks are at a disadvantage. With ground zero not outside of our front door and the Pentagon not visible from our window, the anger we felt that day is perhaps starting to fade. Although Osama bin Laden is history, the enemies who hatched the September 11th plot hope to spawn even more terror. They are counting on our complacency. Convinced we are a nation of selfish materialists, they do not think we have resolve. They do not cower. They do not think we will triumph over them. Let it be said on this Patriot Day that we shall win. Even as we gather to remember those lost in the attacks, America's military is tracking down terrorists and securing liberty at home and abroad. In the memory of September 11th is fresh, if the memory of September 11th is fresh for anyone, it is our men and women in uniform. Along with our elected officials and our intelligence agencies, they are tasked with preventing another tragedy of that magnitude. As they patrol Iraq and Afghanistan, weathering rocks, bullets, and extreme heat, they are dismantling piece by piece the terror networks that threaten peace and security worldwide. We are indebted to them for their willingness to protect our country. God bless our armed forces. At this time, I've got two awards that I would like to present. Certificates of more or less awards, but the correct terminology would be certificates of appreciation. The first one I'd like to present is to our, who just delivered a very powerful speech, Colonel Glenn Snodgrass. I'd like to appreciate you for coming. I appreciate your remarks, and on behalf of this congregation in the town of Vienna, I'd like to present you with a certificate of appreciation. This one is, I don't have the, to be direct, I don't have the right words to capture the depth of our thanks as a post, our thanks as a town, and I'm sure that we can talk to the halls, and many of us can have one-on-one conversations, and you can relate to me as I give a token to our honorable Mayor, Lori Baracco, for everything she does for this town, especially to stand by our post 180 and our fellow veterans. Mayor Lori Baracco, would you accept this certificate? We will now hear America the Beautiful, followed by our chaplain providing the benediction, Dave Wallace, who will present the closing prayer, and we will not be retiring the colors per the program is color in place. This time, presented by the Vienna Sons of the American Eagle Squad 180, we will hear America the Beautiful.
America,
uncover.
Father, we ask you to continue to heal the wounds of our nation, and that you would continue to comfort and sustain the families who still suffer from the losses incurred 17 years ago. Forgive us, Father, when we give in to hatred, when we nurse our grievances. Make us ministers of reconciliation. Make us instruments not of hate, but of your peace. Make us builders, not destroyers. Healers, not avengers. We give thanks to the shining spirit of courage and self-giving love that emerged from the darkness of 9/11. With such models of heroism before us, may we make a renewed commitment to work for mercy and kindness for people all over the world. Increase and extend our compassion for all those everywhere who are the victims of misfortune or violence or injustice. Help us to identify for ourselves those sources of life and light that cannot be shaken by any terror, any terrorists. May we find in you, Lord, an unshakable place to stand and the courage to build and live lives of courage and conviction. Keep our hearts tender, Father, and our minds alert to the human need around us. May we each seek out and find the works of love that we can do. Through Christ. Amen.
Recover. That now concludes our Day to Remember ceremony, and on behalf of Post 180 and the town of Vienna, I want to thank everybody for coming. Again, that concludes it. Thank you.